you think about all these other ways that you can get involved with your community, like influencers, right? Just reaching out to your influencer. Hey, maybe you have a restaurant and you don't have a ton of money, but you're like, I can give you $100 tab and will you just post about it on your story?
Right.
Most likely those influencers are going to say yes because they're about
Don't tempt
their
me
community.
with a free meal,
I know.
That's all I'm saying,
Who doesn't love a free meal?
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. This is Make Marketing Make Sense. Today we have Ciara with Signed Ciara. Fantastic marketing and just all around, jack of all trades over here. How are you doing? How's it going? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing good. Thank you. I'm excited. This is my very first podcast.
First podcast?
First podcast
what
ever.
The heck?
I know.
Oh my gosh,
so Thank you.
There's a first time for everything, know? So here we are.
I'm excited.
Well, you, if you wouldn't mind, I know you're in marketing, but kind of just tell me what is Signed by Ciara?
So I started about 7 years ago. I feel like I got to give the backstory a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Alabama, and
I'm from Alabama.
Are you from Alabama?
I'm from Mobile.
I'm from Birmingham.
Oh, okay.
Right over
Stranged over there. Okay,
So yeah, and in Alabama, I'm not going to say it's this way today, but I would say 7-8 years ago, if you want to be in anything creative, you've got to do it all, right? It's not like becoming a doctor or a lawyer. Like if you're trying to convince someone to do marketing at that point. So you've got to learn like the design, the social media, everything. And so then I ended up moving to Los Angeles because I wanted to pursue a career in acting. And then I also was like, well, I'll, work in marketing, worked for a boutique branding agency for a little while. And when you move out to LA, they're kind of shocked that you can do so many things. They're like, let's take videography, for example. They either are going to hire a videographer or a color editor or just an editor. They do not hire a all-in-one.
Shop.
Right. And so I thought that was so bizarre because I'm coming from one state to the other where it's like completely different. And I was like, well, that's okay. I'm just still going to offer it all. And I ended up starting my own business when I was 23, and I absolutely love it. And I ended up finding out, I was offering social media management, a couple of different services. And then after that, I realized that a lot of clients would be like, oh, well, do you know someone that does videography? And I'm like, well, I don't do videography myself, but yes, I do. And, I started to learn that so many clients don't want to have to deal with like all these different service providers. So I kind of position myself as like a marketing agency, but also you could hire me because I do have all these skills and talents, right? And then if they want to hire a videographer, they don't ever have to talk to them if you don't want to. I can just handle it because we already have a relationship going. And that has actually panned out to be working out incredibly.
That's awesome.
So
Man,
I love it.
What are the odds? Well, well, now you're back. Now you're in New Orleans.
Now I'm in New Orleans. Yes.
Birmingham to LA to New Orleans is like, it's like a giant triangle.
And now I kind of actually position myself as this like remote agency in a way. Because, once again, I do pull people on when I do need them. And I have like my assistant and whatnot. She's fabulous. But, I love New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I'm serving clients nationwide from New Orleans because I am here.
Nice. Okay.
And I do love New Orleans.
That's a good touch.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, in your services, when we talk about it, what would you say is your like specialty? Like, what do you hone in on?
I want to say really the branding portion and getting people kind of like in this space of ready to sell their business is really kind of like a strategy that I have there. So branding, that's really the start of it all, because you have to know who your brand is, who you are, what you look like, all of that. And that leads the way for everything else. So if you don't know who you are, what you look like, all of that information, how can you successfully really start on social media management and email engagement and all those things. So I'm going to say like that is probably my specialty, because even if brands come to me and they've been around for 10 years, a lot of times you have to rebrand. So you have to think about that. Like, oh, well, why is my social media not working? I'm doing everything. I'm posting 5 times a day. I'm doing all this stuff. Well, then it's like, well, you're kind of outdated and you're not
Yeah.
connecting with the
Right.
audience that you say is your audience.
Mhm.
So I always try to reel people back in and say, okay, let's get your branding right first, and
Mhm.
then we take it from there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, what does it take to get that branding right? Like, when you like, how do you know like if they need a rebrand, or how do you know if that company
Yeah,
is something that fits?
definitely. I mean, I think, well, of course, if you just started off, you've got to have something.
Right.
So that's easy, and you do your whole questionnaire, figure out really who the client is, because a lot of the times, you know, what we'll see with brands that are already in existence, they find this plateau where they're like, I don't know what's happening, and
Mhm.
I need you to tell me what's going on. And so you'll kind of recognize they aren't doing something particularly,
Mm.
like
Mhm.
they have maybe hopped on a trend from 5 years ago,
Mm.
and that trend is now outdated,
Mm.
and they didn't really realize when they started the company that they shouldn't have really honed in on a trend as their identity,
Mm.
and really honed in on their identity, like who are they, and then trends can fall in and
Mhm.
come and go as they
Right.
please. So I really just think that figuring out, it's like each person is so unique, and that's another thing. Like, I am not a one package fits all type of service
Mhm.
provider. I'm so customized.
Mm.
So a part of the experience that you get with me is like, I really sit down and take the time to like dig through everything and get to know you,
Mm.
to find out whether or
Mhm.
not that is it. Because we might find out that they aren't outdated. But I mean,
Mhm.
usually just like my own eye
Yeah.
just tells me.
Mm.
And not everyone can do that because
Yeah.
they're not all in marketing.
Right.
So like your average person may not think that they're outdated,
Mm.
but I'm like, that looks like it was on
Yeah.
clip art. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would say it's like a mix of both.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess a good question, because like I like that you're taking this deep dive. You're like looking in, you're like trying to find their brand. Like, what is that definable feature that is your eye? Like, what are you looking for? Like, what is
Hmm.
like, especially when a business is looking to sell, like what do they need to look like? I mean, what is that
Right.
like?
I always think of when you're going to sell, and whether you're going to sell or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it's like the gold standard
Mm.
to position your marketing as if you're going to sell or as if you're going to have investors.
Mm.
Either way, because you have to understand, if you get to that point where you have investors, or you're at a place where you can sell, they want a well working wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just say, for instance, you just are like, I only care about Instagram, and you like build up this whole business, and then they come in and you're like, I'm trying to sell my company for $1 million.
Mm.
And then they're like, oh, you've never been on Facebook at all before? You've never been on TikTok at all before? Well, then your evaluation just dropped,
Mm.
and they're going to offer you less money because now they have to hire a team to build that up because you're now behind.
Mm.
So to me, that's why I always tell my clients, I'm like, we can do things in phases, especially if someone's like on a budget, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to eventually have to do it all,
Mm-hmm.
because that is what ultimately creates that beast, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really going to sell and make money. And
Right.
so there's so many different aspects, I think, of getting ready to sell that doesn't even have to do
Yeah.
with necessarily like social media.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, like, who are you?
Yeah.
Think about it like you're going into a pitch meeting
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
pitching yourself. Okay.
Mm.
So first you're going to talk about who you are
Mm-hmm.
and like why you stand out. You
Right.
need to immediately know what that
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to know like what the heartbeat is. Okay. Also, what's the problem that you're solving?
Right.
What's the problem, or multiple problems, and then all the things that you're solving that all these other brands aren't. Then you're kind of able to get into your product or maybe your service, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And then you're digging into, okay, well, where do we sit into a competitor landscape?
Mm.
If we see all these different competitors, where are we standing out
Mm.
that is going to show an investor or someone who wants to buy your company, hey, this is exactly where we stand out amongst
Right.
all these people in
Right.
such a saturated market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, then it's like, okay, so we're walking kind of through this pitch, right? And so you're now at the point like, okay, here's where we stand out amongst our competitors.
Right.
And now we get into kind of like our community. Who is that community? What do they look like? And why do they love us? And who are the people we're trying to attract?
Mm.
And this is why they love our product. This is why they need our product.
Right.
And it kind of goes from there. And then, of course, once you have that incredible branding,
Mm-hmm.
the space in the competitor landscape that you hone
Yeah.
in on. You have customer satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly your sales are going to absolutely just
Right.
rise.
Right.
Like revenue is going to be
Mm-hmm.
incredible. And it's kind of like a foolproof plan, in my opinion, to set your company up as if you're going to sell
Right.
or have an investor.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
makes sense. I mean, because especially like when I'm thinking about it too. I mean, what I like what you're saying is like you're saying like especially which I'd never even thought about that. It's like you want to have a social media not just because hey it's important for our business, but
Yeah.
because another business everybody knows how important social media is these days.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
don't have it, then it's like oh well now I've got to set your social media up. Like it's
Right.
like that's a detriment to me to buying your company without it.
100%.
So
I mean, completely. And if like you gotta know who you are. And I just don't think that there is one aspect of marketing that will just make you successful.
mm,
I just don't. Maybe there's those one in a millions, and TikTok's actually kind of making that a little bit more,
right.
possible. But
Yeah.
instead of 1 in a million, you're kind of like that 2 in a million now with TikTok,
Right.
right? So I do understand that is possible.
Right.
But it's like the body, right? It all
Mhm.
has to work together. You need the heart, you
Yeah.
need the foot, the arm, the eyes, like
Right.
everything works together. And so if you're like, here you
Yeah.
are with like the heartbeat of the
Yeah.
company, but then you don't have your brain, you're not a functioning human,
Oh
right?
man,
So
when you talk
like,
about that's the Comfystone way. We like to
yeah.
associate things with body parts too. So
Okay.
we're like speaking the same
Okay.
language over
I
here.
love it.
I mean, we love that kind of stuff in our planning meetings. So I
Yeah.
mean, listen, there's someone out there that's they're laughing thinking like, oh man, I know
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
the way. So body parts, we get that.
Body parts.
That's the marketing way.
Yes,
So,
it is, but
yeah.
it's so true. And I mean,
Yeah.
like it's undeniable.
Yeah.
It is completely undeniable. You have to have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's not like you have to do it all at one time. I do
Mm-hmm.
not want to scare people away and be like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to start a business because I don't have all this money to do
Yeah.
this and that and this and that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just work your hardest, even if you can't hire someone like
Right.
me or like you or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
Work your hardest to try to be in every aspect, like email marketing, social media, even mailers. Like
Yeah.
there's so many ways that you can stand out. And if you can hopefully one day do them all, you really are just this
Yeah.
great, well-working
Yeah.
wheel.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, like, you bringing that up, like, when we are thinking about other businesses, like, how do
Mhm.
other businesses, like, what would be in your mind, like, a business's first best step if they don't hire you?
Mhm.
Like, what would you say? Like, okay, we'll start with this, build this
Mhm.
up, like, because I think everybody's always looking for, well, I don't know. Should I start with TikTok? Should I start
Yeah.
with, Instagram? What,
Yeah.
like, what should I do? What do you usually suggest?
Yeah, so I would say first do that real hard look at yourself and your
Mm.
business. First, just like step back
Mhm.
and maybe get some friends and family. And I'm talking about people that you really trust and you care about their opinion.
Mm.
And not just someone that like would have no clue about your business, someone that, maybe even someone you look up to, get their opinion and just say, from a third party's perspective, what do you think about this?
Mhm.
And I don't think that you necessarily need to ask everyone because everyone's going to have all these opinions. But if you don't
Mhm.
have someone like a professional like me, at least someone you look up to is going to give
Yeah.
you the honest, hard truth and have them look at your business. Okay, now you feel comfortable. You're like, okay, maybe I need some tweaks here,
Mhm.
but at least like, okay, I'm good to go. I know who I am. Okay, if you feel good in that aspect, then I would say really starting to get involved with the community. So
Mm.
whatever your community, wherever you are, wherever you live, wherever you're
Mm.
listening from, get involved there.
Yeah.
And the more that a community knows who you are, the more they're actually like willing to help and bring you onto their thing. So let's just say you start volunteering,
Mhm.
or maybe you have a sustainability aspect in your company,
Mm.
whatever it may be. So it's like, let's say you have sustainability packaging and now you want to volunteer with a sustainable company that's helping your city with a water issue or whatever
Yeah.
it may be.
Right.
Those people that are already, a successful nonprofit or whatever is now thinking about you when they host their next party.
Right.
And they're going to ask you, hey, would you like to be involved in this? And now they have, thousands of people.
Right.
And now your business is being exposed entirely for free because you've offered this, you've donated it out of the kindness of your heart, you've made that connection, but they also just gave you a platform to tell all these people about your business completely for free.
Yeah.
And so I just think, and that's just one small way,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
right.
you think about all these other ways that you can get involved with your community, like
Yeah.
influencers,
Mhm.
right? Just reaching out to your influencer. Hey, maybe you have a restaurant and you don't have a ton of money, but you're like, I can give you $100 tab, and will you just post about it on your story?
Right.
Most likely those influencers are going to say yes because they're about
Don't tempt
their
me with a
community.
free meal,
I
That's all
know.
I'm saying,
Who doesn't love a free
Yeah.
meal?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you see what I'm saying
Yeah.
though? It's like if
Yeah.
you just think about your community, where can you get involved?
Yeah.
And then your community will support you.
Yeah.
They will show
Yeah.
up. They will help you.
Yeah.
As long as you show up and help
Yeah.
them as well.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I love that. I mean, I think community is so important, and when we're talking about, you've built this, model up, like, how do you, define success in, for a business? Like, what are some businesses that you see for success, or like, what to you is success, with this model, especially when you're talking about, being collaborative, because
Right.
we preach collaboration all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're already on the same wavelength when
Totally.
we're talking about that. So
Totally.
it's like, what do you see as like success when it comes to that?
I think it's like a multi-part answer because it's brand recognition. It's definitely revenue because I mean, if you have no revenue, you can't
Right.
exist. So but you also need that brand recognition to be able to get the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say customer satisfaction because they're just all three intertwined. You have to
Right.
have all of them together,
Right.
and of course internal satisfaction within
Right.
your team as well. And I think a good example, if we look at a brand today that shows you how great it can be and the turn down. So if you've ever heard of a company called Glossier, they are a cosmetic company.
Okay. I love my cosmetics. I know
you
exactly
love
what
it?
that is.
I thought you would. I thought you would.
Koreans are the number one
I
in
didn't
male
know that.
makeup. So,
Oh yeah,
so
Korean beauty is like on a whole nother level.
it's on a whole new level.
I mean, that's a whole nother
we
podcast.
got a whole new podcast.
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
get me
saying.
back in.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Okay. Okay, we got our expert in. All
yeah,
right.
right here.
Love it.
Okay, so Glossier was I first started off as Into the Gloss. It was a blog. And then she wanted to start this brand that was really honing in on this no makeup look that's a little bit more dewy. And what she was able to do was leverage social media when TikTok really wasn't around. It was really about Instagram, and she was really one of the first people to do it. That was like, we're going to use user generated content to just be our marketing. And it was extremely successful. She had tons and tons of investors come in. And at first, her first round of raising, she went around and asking all these people for money, and like no one would invest. And finally she got an investor. And then she was evaluated, I think at like $1.8 billion at one point. Yeah. In 2019. Wow. Then the pandemic hits, and come to find out what was not happening. And this just shows you can scale a business and make all this money and do great marketing, but if you don't stay on top of it, you will lose it. And this is what ended up happening to her. All these customers were asking, hey, you aren't coming out with new products. What's going on? She really didn't want to change it. And she wasn't listening to her customers. Then come to find out, her internal teams weren't happy. Things with George Floyd started happening. And then all these, employees started talking about how there was internal racism happening. Whoa. And then everyone started quitting. And then she had to have massive layoffs. And then all this got out in the news, and everyone's like, oh no, Glossier is not it. Yeah. You had what felt like an extremely inclusive brand that cared about your natural beauty, showcased all colors, all shapes, all sizes. And then come to find out, your internal team is being like bullied in all these areas, and you're not listening to your customers. They end up falling apart. And so now she ended up having, I think another, if I'm not mistaken, someone else ended up buying it out for a so much smaller evaluation. Oh, wow. And is actually going to be, revamping it and bringing it to like Sephora, because before it was only direct to consumer, which was wild because she had so much success just doing direct to consumer and then, through Instagram and whatnot. So I think that's just like a good example of like, hey, you did this incredible, cool marketing. You have this interesting approach that no one has done yet. Because this is, a while ago. Now we're seeing more of that style makeup and whatnot. But then you don't, nurture it. And then you lose it. Yeah. Because you you aren't
It's
successful
all
because you
about
don't
that
keep on top
customer.
of it.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is. It's all
Yeah.
about the customer,
Yeah.
listening to them and your team.
Mm.
Because if you aren't listening to your team, that team will leave you and you'll fall apart and end up on the news like this. So
well,
it's
that
quite crazy.
is the craziest thing ever. It's like, here we are dooming and glooming about Glossier, but you know what? I feel like the good things are going to come from it. But good things have come to us.
Yeah.
With you being on this podcast,
Thank you.
and tell us where we can find you on, social channels.
All the things. Yes. So you can find me on my business Instagram is Signed Ciara, like you signed a sheet of paper, and then Ciara, Ciara. My website is signedciara.com. And then if you want to follow me personally, it's Dear, like you're writing a letter, period, Dorothy, like the Wizard of Oz.
Wow. Beautiful.
A whole thing.
The whole thing. The whole king caboodles. Well, you've seen it here. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks you, Ciara.
Thanks.
This has been Make Marketing Make Sense, brought to you by Comfystone. If you need video content for social media, your website, or email marketing, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.